have the opportunity to continue this series of lessons. I hope that tonight we'll be able to cover this material in a manner that's understandable. It's hard. Someone said to me one time with the articles that I wrote for the West Virginia Christian, how do you take something so complex and make it so simple? Well, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pull that off tonight, but I've done my very best to be able to take this subject of the emerald cockroach wasp, a creature that God has created that literally is capable of making zombies. And so zombies are a real thing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Science proves that very clearly, and we'll be looking at that this evening. Getting right into this, the scripture reading, if you'd like to follow along, is from Job chapter 12, verses 7 through 10. But ask now the beasts, and they shall teach thee, and the fowls of the air, and they shall tell thee, or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. Who knoweth not in all these that the hand of the Lord hath wrought this, in whose hand is the soul of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind? And so we see from the, some say prophet, and I probably would agree that Job recognized that the creation, the things that are around us, that God has created, God had his hand in each one of these things. No matter how complex it is, God was able to handle it. No matter how amazing it is, God was able to handle it. And so this evening we're going to look at just one of these creatures, the emerald cockroach wasp. And as I said, he's a zombie maker. He's not a very big creature. And yet, the things that it's capable of doing, because God designed it with these abilities, hopefully will make us all realize that evolution is not an adequate answer for the things that we see around us. And this is just one of many examples that that is the case. The emerald cockroach wasp is a master. It's got a master, it's actually got a PhD. It's well beyond the PhD in anatomy, and not only in its own anatomy, but in the anatomy of a cockroach. Now, I know these probably wasps and cockroaches have already had someone tell me, I don't like any bees. I don't like any bees at all. And I understand that. Probably most of us like cockroaches even less. And so, but here we have an example of an animal that God has created, the wasp, that's capable of making the zombie out of every cockroach it meets. And in order to do that, it has to understand anatomy, it has to understand neurochemistry, and it has to understand microbiology. Now, those three areas by themselves leave me in the dust. I mean, I'm not, I've had quite a few courses, but, I certainly wouldn't come anywhere near feeling like I am anywhere near confident to understand those three areas. And yet, this wasp, which is about 3/4 of an inch long, has all of those mastered. He has it figured out perfectly because God designed him perfectly to do what he's capable of doing. So we're going to jump in really quick to this. Time does not permit lingering too long. Reproduction for the emerald cockroach wasp is completely tied to the life cycle of the American cockroach. You cannot separate the emerald cockroach, the wasp, let's just not say that word off the bat, the wasp, okay? You cannot separate the wasp from the cockroach. They must be present at the same time, evolutionarily. That's a problem for the atheists and the evolutionists. Those two animals had to be simultaneously evolved, and of course they had to be perfectly adapted for the relationship that they have at the same time. So reproduction for the wasp must have the cockroach. And so that is a very important fact. But the cockroach, no matter what you think, isn't a willing participant in this. He doesn't like this idea. This is not his idea of a good time. All right, so the cockroach is going to put up as much of a fight as he possibly can muster. Now, don't get me wrong. Cockroaches, while they're not terribly big animals, relative to their size, they are fairly capable fighters. And so it is not a guarantee by any stretch of the imagination that the wasp, and this is always the female, sorry guys, male wasp do nothing as far as the cockroach. So I hate to say that, that's hard, man. But anyway, it's true. These are always the female. The female is the one that, of course, is responsible for reproduction, for laying the eggs, and for collecting the cockroaches that are necessary for the reproduction of the species. And so the cockroach isn't exactly just going to sit there and say, okay, do your thing, wasp. That's not how it works. The cockroach puts up a valiant fight using its front legs. Of course, cockroaches being insects have 6 pairs of legs, or 3 pairs of legs, six legs total, and the front ones are quite capable to kick away the wasp. And the fight is not a guarantee for the mother wasp. It's not guaranteed that she's going to win this fight. But if she does, then she very quickly takes control of the matter. She is going to take that cockroach and she's going to turn it into a mindless zombie. She's going to have total control over it from that point on until its death. And we'll see that in the case if the mother wasp wins, the cockroach always dies. That's just the way it is. So we're going to try to understand how this occurs. So if the wasp wins the initial fight, then the first thing it will do will be to deliver a sting. Now and I know Kevin said, I don't like bees. Well, we know that bees have stingers and they can sting, fairly effectively. It's no fun to be stung. Well, if you're in the case of the cockroach, if you're this cockroach and stung by the mother wasp, it is a guaranteed death sentence. Death doesn't come for about 20 days though. But that first sting will guarantee that the cockroach is not able to do anything about it. The first sting will paralyze the defensive legs. That first pair of legs on the cockroach will be taken out of action. It will be paralysis. Now, again, I'm not an expert on the anatomy of a cockroach. That's why a cockroach looks upside down, looks like upside down. I have seen a few of those whenever you poison them and they lay belly out. Over here is a sort of a schematic of his brain, of his nervous system. Up here's the brain, which of course is up here in the head of the cockroach. Then there's something called ganglia, and we have those. They're just simply bundles of nerves. And we have them running down each side of our backbone, at the spinal column. And so that's a very common word in anatomy. So it has the thoracic ganglia and the second thoracic ganglia. And of course, there's the sets of legs, first pair, second pair, third pair. Now that becomes important because the wasp has to give the first sting in the exact right spot or this whole battle's useless. It was a waste of good time for the wasp to win the battle with cockroach. Without delivering that first sting to the exact spot here at the first thoracic ganglia, which will paralyze those defensive legs. The defensive legs of the cockroach then become of no effect. The cockroach simply cannot move those any longer and cannot use them to kick away, push away the cockroach, and make its escape. So sting number 1 out of 5, there will be, 3 to 5. It varies, but most of the time about 5. With this first sting, there are 3 chemicals. The most common one is something that's normally abbreviated GABA, G-A-B-A, gabapentin, which it's actually, you can go to an animal doctor, what they call the veterinarian, go to a veterinarian, and they will use this as many times as a treatment for paralysis, but to cause a deadening of nerves and muscles. They use them in seizures in some animals. So GABA or gabapentin is one of the first ones, and it's in the first sting that the wasp delivers. Now, there's about 3 chemicals, but gabapentin is the most common. It causes a 2 to 3 minute paralysis. So once the first sting, and again, if that mother wasp, doesn't hit that exact spot where those nerves control those legs, you can forget it. The battle precisely where on that cockroach you make that first sting in order to paralyze the front legs. Now, the three chemicals cause a short-term paralysis, generally lasting a very short period of time, 3 to 4 minutes, not going on very long. But they're always delivered in a 10 to 7 to 4 ratio. Gabapentin being the most abundant at 10, a ratio of 10, 7, and 4. So those three chemicals have to be measured out in the stinger of the or the wasp in precisely those amounts. If the amounts are different, then it doesn't work as effectively as it does in that 10 to 7 to 4 ratio. And so the wasp has to know how much of these chemicals, and they're not just mixed and dumped into a big sort of venom sac. They actually have them in separate containers, and they have to be measured out in order to get the most effect out of the first sting that the mother wasp is going to give. And so, but this ratio gives it the longest lasting effect. Now remember, in all of this process, the mother wasp has one goal, and that is to keep that cockroach alive. At all costs, it's got to stay alive. It cannot be killed, or she's wasted her time. It has to be alive for the duration of this process. And so this paralysis, this paralyzing of the legs, the defensive legs of the cockroach, is sting number 1. All right? The second sting will be delivered, and of course, this causes the cockroach to not even have a desire to escape. The second sting, this is where the zombie comes in. With the second sting in what's called the subesophageal ganglia, that just means esophagus is in your throat. All right, below the throat is where the mother wasp aims the second sting in that particular location. Now, here's where it gets, well, I'm telling you a word I can come up with, it's freaky. Weird. How in the world does a wasp feel? Its stinger can tell. And that's according to the evolutionists. That's according to the entomologists that study this. It can, quote unquote, tell where its stinger is located in the cockroach. It can feel where it's going. All right? And it has to hit a spot that, well, it's not even as big as that dot. Okay? It's a very, very tiny spot that must be stung. Those chemicals have to be delivered in that exact location. And the two tiny spots are, of course, up in the brain. This, when the mother cockroach delivers the second sting to this location, or these two small areas, this turns off the escape reflex. The cockroach now just stands there. Like, okay, do what you want. Well, actually that's not quite the case. But it loses its ability, its desire, its natural instinct, its natural intuition to flee whenever it's in danger. Now, it becomes a mindless robot or a zombie. And so this is where the zombie comes in, is when that wasp stings at the base of the brain of the cockroach, hitting the exact spot. First time, it doesn't have an unlimited amount of these chemicals, so it can't just keep stinging and stinging and stinging until it finds the right area. It's got to get it the first time, and it does that again by feeling for the exact location, right, in the cockroach brain. Well, here's where, going back to our anatomy chart, again, cockroach, okay, the second sting is up here at the base of the brain. All right, so right there, again, a cockroach brain, if you've ever looked at one, the head isn't very big. Imagine how much smaller the brain would be in there. And yet that wasp delivers that sting to the exact location, feeling where it needs to put that stinger and put those chemicals so that it can zombify, so it can turn the cockroach into a mindless robot. It has complete control. Once that second sting is delivered, the mother wasp now has, that cockroach is hers. desire to escape. It may know it's in danger. It may know that this isn't a good deal. This is a bad situation, but it can't do anything about it. It is unable to change its situation in any way, shape, or form at this point. Now, the zombie cockroach, again, totally out of control of everything, just stands there. It starts first to groom itself. Now, we know that most animals, you've seen birds preening, you've seen other cats licking their fur. That's a fairly common practice in the animal kingdom, is to keep their external bodies clean. Well, the zombie cockroach does this as well. Cockroaches do it normally as well. But the zombie cockroach, because of the delivery of the chemicals in the sting number 2, begins to self-groom, begins to clean itself up, which, again, is a pretty good trick, because then the mother wasp doesn't have to do it. Because, as we're going to see, she's going to depend on that cockroach not transmitting any diseases to her babies. And so, the neurotransmitters, which normally control activities in our brains and cockroach brain, all living organisms that possess a nervous system have neurotransmitters that are the signals that communicate in our brains to our nervous systems, to our muscles, etc. And so the cockroach begins self-grooming and becomes very sluggish. It just sort of moves in slow motion with not a lot of activity. The mother wasp then has a second job that she's got to do. The first job was to get the cockroach under control. All right? Again, not a guaranteed battle, but she took care of that situation. She now has her zombie cockroach standing there cleaning himself, waiting for her to tell him what to do. And we'll see that coming up in a minute. But she needs to find a suitable location for this cockroach and her eggs to develop. So she leaves the cockroach there, flies away, goes and finds a suitable place for digging. She doesn't have this burrow already dug. She's got to go dig one. Now, they're very capable diggers, and maybe you've seen something like this on the Discovery Channel. These wasps, I mean, they're amazing how fast they can dig a hole 2 or 3 inches into a sand dune or into a bank. Kicking with their front legs, pulling the sand down, and kicking with their back, kicking it away with their back legs. And they're kicking sand out 3 or 4 inches from a little half-inch, 3/4 inch wasp. And so, but she will go find an adequate location, dig a burrow, and it's got to be somewhere close. Now you have to think about this fact that you've got about a 3/4 inch wasp, and you've got maybe an inch-long cockroach that maybe is double her own weight. Now, if she goes too far away and puts her burrow somewhere too far away, then she's got a problem. How do I get him from here to there? The cockroach has to end up in the burrow. But she's got that handled too. But she tries to stay within a relative location so that she doesn't have to take that long to get back and get the cockroach into the burrow. Within about 30 minutes, she returns to her zombie. She returns to the cockroach, and now we begin to see exactly the control that the wasp knows it has over this cockroach. Now you have to remember, she knows all of this. She understands exactly what she has done. She knows that I paralyzed his front legs. I made a zombie out of him by stinging him in an exact location in his brain. I went and found a suitable location to dig a burrow so I could take him there. And I need to go back and I need to get him from where he is to where I want him. Well, God worked that out for her as well. She will then carefully move to finish this and take complete control over the nervous system. She does this with about three more stings. So we have 1 and 2, 1 paralyzed the front legs, 2 paralyzed or cause the zombification, 3, 4, and 5, and complete the process of giving her complete control. And so stings 3, 4, and 5 are located right here in the area of the same, just about the same area Sting 1 was, but right here in the first thoracic ganglion. And that gives her complete motor control. She now basically has him on a remote control. You've seen these remote control cars and these little remote control airplanes, and she's got him where she wants him. What she's going to do now is use those controls to say, come on dude, we're going where I lead you. And that's exactly what happens. The mother cockroach then eats off half of one of the cockroach's antennas. So the wasp, the female wasp, mother wasp will eat off one half of its antenna. Now, there's two purposes behind this. Number one, it needs a steering wheel. That seems kind of silly. But that's what she uses it for. She uses it for a steering wheel. But remember, she's put out a lot of effort. She's fought the cockroach. She stunned the cockroach. She flew away, found a sufficient and adequate location for a burrow. She's dug a burrow. She's flown back. She's tired and thirsty. So the next thing that she does is feeds. After chewing off half of its antenna, she will feed on, well, it's called hemolymph, and basically that's the cockroach blood. So she drinks the cockroach's blood in order to get nutrients, in order to get energy, so that she can now continue this process of reproduction. The cockroach isn't going anywhere. It doesn't react whenever she chews off one of its antennae. The cockroach is just like, okay, whatever. All right, no big deal here. Things are cool. All right, of course, it has no clue what it's doing. It has no clue what's happening to it. And of course, the mother wasp has figured all that out. So here's where it continues to get a little weird. Using that cut-off antenna, the mother wasp will walk along the ground, and when she walks and puts a little pressure on the antenna, the cockroach starts following. It walks along behind her. If she pulls the antenna to the left or to the right, the cockroach goes right. She's driving this cockroach. That's funny, isn't it? It does look a little weird. I will give you that. I mean, it's bound to be one of the oddest things to use that antenna that it has chewed off as a steering wheel to drive this cockroach exactly where it needs to go. Now, you stop and think about it. Now, the cockroach is going this way. The wasp is walking backwards. How does she know where her burrow was? It might be 25, 30 yards away. Well, if you're a half-inch long cockroach, that is a pretty firm piece. Somehow, she knows exactly where that burrow is placed, exactly where that burrow is, and whether she's got GPS, whether she can navigate by the sun, this is happening in daylight, whether exactly how she knows exactly where that nest is, or where that burrow is, of course, is unclear to science today. They don't know how she's pulling that stuff off. And so she leads her zombie back to the burrow. All right. Here she completes almost the last part of her reproductive duties. She will lay 1 or 2 eggs. Now remember, the stings 3, 4, and 5 were right at the base of the second pair of legs. All right? There appears to be a reason for that, because that's the exact location that she will lay her eggs. 1 or 2 eggs, like I said, it varies, but she will lay those eggs exactly on that spot. There's a very particular reason for that. Because that baby wasp needs to have, after it pupates, after it hatches out of its egg, has to have some energy, has to have some nutrients to be able to do what it needs to do next. And so if the mother wasp put those eggs anywhere else, the baby wasp, the maggot, the embryo, larva, the pupa would not be able to find what it needs to be able to get to its next location. She finds the exact location for the egg so that the larva can find what it needs to eat to be able to move. Yes, folks, these eat their way in. Remember, all the time the cockroach is alive. Completely functional, other than it's paralyzed and it's brainless. The zombie does nothing. The zombie can do nothing other than just let it happen. And so the exact location of those eggs, the placement of those eggs is very important. This is where, if you want to see a cockroach with an egg on it, that's what it looks like. There's leg pair number 1, number 2, and number 3. And that location is where the mother wasp must place the egg in order for its baby, the pupa, the maggot is, that's what we call it, the larva, to get what it needs to be able to continue its life as it continues. Now, the mother cockroach, the mother, what is it? The wasp. That's what I'm after. After a while, the roach and wasp get all messed up. The mother wasp has finished her duty. Her next job, she's laid her egg or eggs. She's got the roach in the burrow, and now she seals it up. She goes out, leaves the egg and the cockroach in there. She goes out and she fills the burrow in. She doesn't want any other animal to eat the cockroach, which there are lots of animals that would be happy, mice, etc. And scorpions would be happy to eat a cockroach, but she buries them, covers the whole thing in, and so the cockroach and the baby wasp are now stuck inside this pitch black hole. All right? You think, okay, the story's over. No, the story has just begun, because it gets even weirder. All right, so, questions we have to ask, how does the mother cockroach know how, all of these things, stinging and locations and how does she feel and all that. But let's go to the larval stage and look at some of the things that it does. The larva will eat its structures on the outside of the cockroach. That's why the eggs have to be placed to face the second pair of legs, because there are structures there that the larva, the maggot, can use to get energy so that it can eat its way. And that's what they look like. They're little white, worm-looking things, maggots. All right? And they need energy in order to eat their way inside the cockroach. And so once they've done that, once they've got the energy and they've eaten their way into the cockroach, cockroaches, I don't know if you're aware of this, let you know a little secret, they're dirty. They're dirty animals. All right? Carry germs, carry diseases. Not a good thing to have running across your kitchen countertop. All right? You hadn't noticed. All right? So the cockroaches are dirty animals. Well, the baby wasp, or the larval wasp, in its saliva, as it's eating, it produces its own disinfectant. It produces its own Clorox wipes. Well, not quite. Out of its saliva comes a disinfectant that kills all the germs and the bacteria on any part of the cockroach that it is eating. All right? That prevents diseases. That's a pretty good trick. Here's another one. That larva somehow, on the inside of this cockroach, I've never tried to dissect a cockroach. I can't imagine it would be very easy. They're not very big. And yet, on the inside of this cockroach, that larva, that baby worm, knows which organs are non-lethal, which non-vital organs that it'll eat first. It wants that cockroach as alive as long as possible. It doesn't like dead food. All right? It wants living flesh. And that zombie cockroach is providing that. And somehow, that baby wasp, that larva, that maggot, knows exactly which organs inside. It doesn't eat the brain first, because that would do what? That would kill it. The cockroach would die immediately. So it's eating only those things that aren't going to hurt it, aren't going to kill it initially. It also eats a whole. Well, this is kind of weird. Most of you don't realize if you want to drown an insect, hold its legs in the water. You don't have to put its head in the water. You hold its legs in the water. That's how they breathe. You breathe through their legs. Okay, in little holes. course, what we call metamorphosis. And we understand metamorphosis. You have a butterfly that lays an egg, and it hatches into a worm, into a caterpillar, and then it goes into the pupa, and then the pupa goes from the way it looked, the worm changes completely, and then comes out a butterfly or a moth. So this wasp, this baby wasp, is going to undergo metamorphosis. So it's inside of a cockroach in the pitch black, total darkness. It's eating non-vital organs, which, if it's totally dark, how do you know which one? Mom gave it a map. Okay, here's the map of which one to eat first. Well, it's totally black. How do you read the map? Doesn't have a little headlamp, a mirror under there, a little headlamp. All right? That doesn't work. And so in some manner, in this pitch black hole, 4 or 5 things, and we're going to have to hustle through these, but several things that the baby wasp must know. Number one, it must know once it hatches into a worm on the outside of the cockroach, what organs does it need to eat, and it knows it must go inside. It must eat its way after 4 to 5 days after it's eaten structures on the outside of the cockroach. It must eat its way in because it's not ready to undergo that metamorphosis, that change that will bring it into the adult wasp phase. And so it has to know, when okay, this is where I've got to go. I need to go here. Number 2, it must know how to get in by eating its way in, but it also knows what organs are non-vital or non-essential. Now, if I gave you $1 million, if I had $1 million, I don't. But if I said, I will give you $1 million if you can take a cockroach, and I'll give you 6 months to do it, to study cockroach anatomy, and I say, I want you to go take a live cockroach, and I want you to dissect it, and I want you to take out at least 3 or 4 organs out of that cockroach before it dies. And it's got to stay alive for 2 or 3 days in between. You take out an organ, it dies, I get to keep the money. Probably most of us wouldn't even attempt it, number 1. Number 2, I can guarantee I couldn't do it. And yet, here we've got this magnet in pitch blackness that somehow understands and knows, I eat this and not that. If I eat that, my meal ticket's gone. If I eat that, it's over. I'm dead too, in essence. So it has to know what the essential organs are. It has to know first time off the bat. If it got it wrong, it's dead, and the life cycle of that particular female wasp is over. Number 3, it has to know that it's supposed to eat an opening through the spiracle, through its breathing tube. Well, how does a baby, if I hadn't told you, how many people would have gotten a trivia question, a Jeopardy question, where's the breathing tubes in a cockroach? How many would have said the legs? Very few people. There might have been 1 or 2 that might have got it right. All right? But very few people would have gotten that right, and yet that baby cockroach, that maggot, the pupa knows that it must eat openings so that it can get the oxygen it needs. This releases air into the abdominal cavity of the cockroach, again, which is what? Still alive. The cockroach is still alive. It has not died yet. It's still fully functional. It's still got the normal life processes going on with it. It's just missing a few organs. A few parts, where'd they go? Not that it probably even realizes that they're gone. So, but the pupa, the maggot has to have its air as well. As it gets near to the process of pupating, going into the metamorphosis stage, into the cocoon, the larva will eat the nervous system. Now, this is the final blow. This is for the cockroach. This is the death sentence. This is when the cockroach dies. When that baby wasp eats through the nervous system and consumes all the nervous system, then the life of the cockroach has ended. And in essence, the cockroach has fulfilled fulfilled its part of the reproductive cycle of the emerald cockroach wasp. It has done what, maybe not willingly, okay, but it has done what God had designed. Now, can you imagine that wasp picking on any other insect, a grasshopper, a cricket? You pick whatever insect you like, all right? Would it have worked if it did not find the cockroach? Number one, all those locations in the nervous system, the esophageal ganglion, the thoracic ganglion, those would be different on a grasshopper or on a cricket. So, and how does a wasp know what a cockroach is? I mean, anyone got an answer for that? You do. I got some scientists that would love to know, right? Because there are major articles that have been written in the past 10 years, research into this process, into this relationship of predator and prey. Yes, the wasp is a predator. It is, of course, she's not eating the cockroach. She's doing it so that her babies can eat, so that her babies can have the energy necessary to undergo their metamorphosis, their change from a maggot into an emerald cockroach wasp, an adult. All right. Well, how does the baby wasp know to secrete antimicrobials? These chemicals that sterilize what they're eating. We shouldn't eat stuff that's rotten. Okay. Shouldn't eat stuff that's got a lot of germs on it. Probably not healthy. You got a lot of acids and stuff in your stomach that may help take care of that, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you really had to. Right? Well, neither should the baby wasp. And so, how does it understand? How does it know? Well, doesn't have to know. God designed it. God created it. The adult wasp does not have this in its saliva. These chemicals are not found in the adult mother emerald cockroach wasp. It's just not there. It's only in the maggot, only in the larva. And so, of course, the only way this could happen would be if God knew exactly what that maggot was going to need in order to survive inside a cockroach, and somehow taught the cockroach, or taught the maggot, the wasp baby, which organ it was to eat. They spin a cocoon, they're ready to go through metamorphosis, and of course the cockroach is now dead. The cockroach just becomes a dried husk. It, folks, has been hollowed out, literally. It's got nothing on the inside. The maggot, the baby ate all of the non-essential organs. That would be urinary system, respiratory parts of the respiratory system, circulatory system, all these other systems, and left the nervous system until last. It ate that, and then after eating that, it says, okay, I'm ready to go into the pupa. I'm ready to come out in a few days, a week or so, as an adult emerald wasp. All right? And, of course, that in and of itself, it's hard to explain, and I have a couple lessons where I try to do it, doesn't work. How to explain what metamorphosis is. If you were to take a pupa of a butterfly, it went from a worm, some of them are ugly as all get out, and it disappears, it grows up, disappears into this cocoon. If at about halfway through, you took a pair of scissors and snipped the bottom of that off, there isn't a worm that comes out. There isn't a butterfly that comes out. You have to have a cup under because you get liquid. Because the worm turns itself into juice. It breaks its body down, turns itself into a liquid, and then starts reassembling itself. That liquid would have cells, its nervous system, it's all of the structures that a butterfly needs to survive to be inside of that pupa, inside of that cocoon. And so the baby wasp has the same situation. How they do that and do that so perfectly and come out the perfectly formed adult, of course, is just nuts. The baby female then grows up, repeating the process when she gets old enough. She now has transferred information to her. That information includes biochemistry and anatomy, behavioral sciences, in order to make it to be able to, when she grows up, again it's the female, when she grows up, she will find a cockroach and proceed to do the exact same steps that her mother did, and her mother has never seen her mother. She's never seen another wasp, another emerald cockroach wasp. And yet, somehow, she knows how to do the whole process. Well, how does DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid, the blueprint of life, the instructions for all living things, how do they know to do this? Well, evolution's answer is instinct. They know to do it by instinct. And over millions and millions of years, they would have just accidentally got it right. Wrong. Impossible. Because any one of those steps, a sting in the wrong location, a sting with the wrong kind of chemicals, the larva eating the nervous system first, the whole thing's short-sighted. It's gone. That whole series has to be exactly precise each time, or that particular creation goes out of existence. Instinct doesn't begin to answer this. But they define instinct as a pre-wiring of the brain with a built-in program. Give me a break. That's one of the biggest problems of science today, biological sciences today, is the information theory. Where did the information come from that told the wasp how to do this? Told the butterfly how to become a caterpillar, hatch out of an egg, become a caterpillar, grow up, go into a spin a cocoon, and come out, and have a creature with wings, beautifully collared, and each one of the monarchs and royal and all the each types of butterflies have different patterns and different collars on their wings. Without God's creation, without God's creative ability, it couldn't happen. So who taught the mother wasp how to do all this? Who tells the baby wasp how to complete this feeding process of vital and non-vital organs? Which ones to eat, what, to open up a spiracle and a breathing tube so that it gets oxygen? How would each of these intricate steps have worked together in the first time? The very first time? Well, obviously the only way that it could happen to a logical person, now I'm not saying everyone's logical, because evolutionists are not going to give up their belief. Don't confuse me with facts. I don't want to know them. There's got to be a way. You give me enough time and anything can happen. Time's the hero of the evolutionary plot, of course, the Creator did. And so there is a God. The song in our songbook, there is a God. Verse number 3, secures life from mortal mind. God holds the germ within his hand. Though men may search, they cannot find, for God alone does understand. We don't sing that verse in here as much as we should. That verse we ought to skip to. I don't know. 1, 3, and 5, 1, 3, and 4. Because that one statement alone is an extremely valuable point for us to realize. There is a God. He knows exactly how that wasp is to do what it's supposed to do. He instills into that mother wasp the exact process, the exact structures, and the knowledge of what and where and how to feel with your stinger in a microscopic location in a wasp brain, and how to recognize, or a cockroach brain, and how to recognize what a cockroach is. All right? So there is a God. Well, the question is, do you serve the God who designed the emerald cockroach wasp? God's ability, his knowledge of what it took for that wasp to complete its life cycle as the mother does, the process that the maggot, the baby, goes through, and the steps that it must follow in order for it to be able to successfully grow up and become a fully functional adult wasp is, in the master's hands. God designed the plan not only for the wasp, but he designed the plan for our salvation. Of course, to hear, believe, repent, confess, and be baptized. While this lesson hasn't been about the gospel plan of salvation and Jesus, but Jesus, the Creator, knew exactly what that wasp would need. Just like he knows exactly what we, as sinful creatures, need in order to be pleasing and acceptable to him. This evening, if you've never done that, you need to be obedient to the designer who created the emerald cockroach wasp and the baby with their knowledge of what they need to do in order to survive and be able to reproduce. You can do that this evening. If you've done that and fallen away, the opportunity for you to come back and let your needs be known. The church will pray with you and for you as we're commanded to do. If there's anything we can do to help you in your salvation, we encourage you to come while we stand and sing the song.